The year was 1965. The Vietnamese War was raging. The Voting Rights Act is signed into law by Lyndon Baines Johnson. The Sound of Music is released. And A Charlie Brown Christmas is the first animated TV special. Jerry Brown is governor of California, and the population of Moraga is 1,500. Moraga is booming with residential real estate development. The controversy about the Caltrans plan to push the Shepherd Canyon Freeway through Moraga Valley is growing. The community is outraged about new homes crawling up and down the hilly open spaces and discussing incorporation to take control of Moraga's destiny. In 1965, Sonia and Lloyd Leviton had just moved to Moraga. Sonia is quoted as saying, quote, "When we first came to Moraga, I wondered about the unique Spanish-style building on the hill. I wanted to get a closer view, but was reluctant to invade what was private property. It was Postmaster Eleanor Dickinson who told me it was the Moraga adobe, granted to the Moraga family long ago. It was the first time I heard of a land grant, and I began to read about these. When I asked Eleanor where I could learn more from the local historical society, she just laughed and said I would have to start one," unquote. Sonia was busy with 2 young children and a growing career as a writer, but she had always been interested in new beginnings, especially close to home. When she got the help of her husband, Lloyd, and several friends, people like the Cohens, Don and Jean Manuel, who owned the adobe, Joyce and Jack King, Brother Dennis and Brother Matthew, both from St. Mary's College. Luckily, Brother Dennis Goodman, the librarian at St. Mary's College, had long had an interest in Moraga history and had been accumulating historical documents, so Sonia was not starting from scratch. Don Manuel became their first president, and board members were Eleanor Dickinson, Nancy and Richard Irwin, Brother Dennis Goodman, Marilyn Harbord, Sonia and Lloyd Leviton, William McCaskill, Jean and Don Manuel, Brother Wilfred Matthew, Dorothy Mutnick, and Gladys and John Shelley. What was the Moraga Historical Society beginning like? The Moraga Historical Society was formed on October 12, 1965, and the first meeting was held November 30, 1965. It was an open meeting with a presentation by Eugene Moraga, the last person born at the adobe, an overview of the rancho by photographer George Collier, and a panel discussion followed by questions and answers. The Moraga community's response was tremendous. They planned the initial meeting with advertisements in the local newspaper and word of mouth, expecting about 20 to 30 people who might be interested. To their great amazement, over 300 people crowded into the room. Unquote. Monthly meetings were held at the adobe, St. Mary's, the firehouse, or circling around local schools. They had various speakers, many of whom were old-timers, some historians, all with knowledge of early Moraga residents and local history. Dues were $25 yearly, with separate fees for the banquet, of course, and buses for society trips. Can you imagine 60 years ago people paid $25 yearly to be members of the Moraga Historical Society? Today the membership fee is $20 for an individual and $30 for a household. If you inflate adjustment $25 to the present, the fee should be 10 times higher, or $257 to be exact. Currently, our membership is approximately $160. There is something else that is different today than 60 years ago. Moraga's population is 10 times bigger than in 1965. When we had our booth at the Commons on the July 4th and the Pear and Wine Festival, a lot of young people, including families with children, stopped by to check us out. A revival of interest in history is happening, a craving for a sense of place, even if you moved here from far away and have no local history. It's a sign of the changing times. It's our plan to keep the Moraga Historical Society membership affordable and make what we do even more accessible to the entire community. Brother Dennis Goodman, St. Mary's librarian, was fascinated with the history of Moraga, and for years he had been collecting historical data on his own. This research information, plus artifacts collected in the surrounding area, were stored at the St. Mary's College in the old library. Still remaining in the current history center is the file cabinet containing hundreds of index cards compiled by Brother Dennis with historical facts he collected. Brother Dennis, Brother Matthew, Maggie Skinner, and Mary Ostrander were pivotal in collecting and archiving the deluge of historical documents and artifacts in the early years. Once the news spread about the creation of Historical Society, residents began flooding the society with artifacts described during the heyday of the construction occurring in Moraga. But over time, the SMC space became crowded with limited access, and there was no room for volunteer archivists to get anything done. After 3 decades of Moraga Historical Society archives had reached the end of the line. In 1996, Moraga Historical Society board member Jim Coy proposed that a permanent history center be built as a West Wing annex to the Moraga Library. This idea gained traction with the town council, and Margaret DePriester championed the formation of the History Center Development Committee. With an overwhelming public response, the funding this construction, $150,000 was raised to build a 3-room, 800-square-foot annex. Moraga Historical Society board member Dave Trotter was able to secure a 40-year, zero-cost tenancy lease for the Moraga Historical Society. The dedication took place on July 4, 1999. Brother Dennis, Maggie Skinner, Mary Ostrander, and countless volunteers embraced the challenge of moving the archives into the new History Center, which had become a place for community members to visit and/or do research. For years, the center was under the watchful guidance of Elsie Mastic and Margaret DePriester. This task continues with Bonnie Kramus and aide Pat Williams. Here you can see what the original archives in the St. Mary's College Library 3rd floor annex looked like. It was literally crammed to the rafters, and because it was an attic space, archivists at times had to stoop to avoid hitting the ceiling. In contrast, our new History Center is a very efficiently organized annex to the west of the Moraga Library. It houses all our physical archives, is open Thursdays 1 to 3 p.m. or by appointment. What might you find at our History Center? Much of our archives consist of 2-dimensional objects such as maps, photos, and documents, but they also consist of space-consuming objects such as artifacts, books, and audio-video media. We have a plan to create an online photo catalog of our physical artifacts. Half of our video collection is already online through YouTube, while our audio collection is a challenge for the future. We have a book collection with about 450 books. You cannot borrow them from the History Center, but we have in our online book collection catalog provided World Cat links that allow researchers to track down the facility where they can be borrowed in the Bay Area. Some books, such as unpublished manuscripts, are not in the World Cat system. We have already scanned and made available online some, such as Frank Drager's 1989 memoir of Moraga's development from the Moraga Company days through Utah construction. There remains lots to be done. Our paper documents are stored in what we call vertical files. The index lists over 2,000 subjects. If you assume 10 to 20 documents per folder, there are 20,000 to 40,000 documents that need to be scanned. When you visit the History Center and pull one, say the Shepherd Canyon folder, it's chock full of newspaper clippings, letters, and pamphlets. Stuff that does not exist online, or if it does, good luck finding it with Google search. Pulling one of the document folders is the most common reason people visit the History Center. We have a substantial map collection consisting of oversized maps and blueprints we store in our map drawers. Pulling them out and putting them back is a huge pain. We cannot scan them, but we can photograph them and convert them into PDF files, which we have done with a few so far. Putting the map collection online is an important goal. We have over 1,000 photo prints in our photo collection. Getting these scanned, cataloged, and put online is our current digitalization priority. These photographs are the source of those used in Moraga's Pride, which we first published in 1987 and reproduced as a second edition in 2002. Our research director, Susan Skilton, went through the entire photo collection to select the photos that became the basis for her Moraga Images of America book published in 2016. We welcome donations of old photos or loans that allow us to scan them. Our slide collection used to have 850 slides, but when we scanned them, the number was only 830 slides. These slides were taken by MHS members during the 1971 and 1989, when slide film was still a big thing. Today, all photos are digital with the new problem that there are way too many. The slide collection was difficult for History Center visitors to view and was vulnerable to a disappearing problem. None of this matters anymore because the entire slide collection has been digitalized and is now available online. We have many board members, past and present, who have been awarded certificates of recognition by the Conference of California Historical Societies. Established at the College of the Pacific in Stockton in 1954, 2024 was the 70th anniversary of the CCHS. The organization serves to preserve California history by unifying and strengthening historical organizations throughout the state. Award recipients are nominated by the volunteers they work with, and the awards are given once a year to hardworking Historical Society volunteers and scholars of California history. Here you can see which MHS volunteers were recognized since the award started a quarter century ago. The creation of the History Center was a huge milestone for the Moraga Historical Society, but today it faces a new challenge. Climate change has increased the fire risk. Insurance companies are canceling home insurance left and right. The fire department is working on risk mitigation, but you can't assume it will never happen here. The thought that 60 years of painstaking collection and archiving of paper documents might go up in smoke terrifies us. Many documents are irreplaceable. Searching the internet for local history turns up mainly material we have already put online. The flow of donated archival documents is not what it was during the early decades. MHS has done a great job preserving the past. The new challenge is to preserve these paper archives by migrating them online. Our major challenge for the next decade is to digitize our physical archive collections. An effort was undertaken in 2000 by MHS to digitize its archives, but the internet was still evolving and the project fizzled. In 2019, we commissioned a redesign of our website, and MHS board member Susan Skilton recruited her husband John Kaiser to become webmaster. In the old days, you relied on a third-party webmaster to do updates, which meant that not much got done, or it cost a lot of money to get done. Today, we control the website entirely with in-house MHS volunteers. John created a custom solution through a database system which can eventually be migrated to a commercial system. What we have developed is an online catalog system which looks like this. When we scan, we first save as a high-resolution TIFF file, which can be used for printing in a book. Then we convert that file into a decent resolution JPEG, and then into a low-resolution thumbnail. When we scan a photo, we record all information on the back. When you look at a catalog, you will see this information along with a fuzzy thumbnail. Click on the thumbnail, and you have a good resolution JPEG. Archiving information about the past and hoping someone will one day care and look it up is part of what the Moraga Historical Society does. An equally important thing we do is interpret Moraga's history and educate it about it. In 1985, the Moraga Historical Society board decided that the rich history of Moraga needed to be documented. Enter veteran writer-journalist Sandy Kimball of Lafayette, who was hired to compile the abundant research Brother Dennis had recorded into Moraga's first history book. Kimball had already authored books on Lafayette and Orinda and was an ideal choice to document Moraga's rich history. A UC Berkeley graduate with a degree in journalism, Kimball had worked for local newspapers and radio stations, and she was a private freelance writer. Her task was to trace 2 centuries of Moraga history from prehistoric times to incorporation. In writing Moraga's Pride, Kimball skillfully interwove the various cultural, sociological, and technological developments that contributed to the vibrant Moraga Valley of today. 2 Moraga residents played key roles. Les Kramus provided the drawings, and Maggie Skinner selected the photographs. In June 1987, after just 1 year and 8 months, the book was complete, and sales began on October 15, 1987. The first edition print run sold out, and in 2002, MHS published the second edition. The El Rancho monthly newsletter was an excellent source, keeping the Moraga Historical Society membership informed about speaker reviews, future MHS events, board business decisions, and community developments. In later years, the newsletter included a section devoted to Moraga history. As Les Kramus, augmenting each edition with his artwork, Larry Swindell 2012 to 2015, and Bill Lund 2015 to 2020 assumed the role of producing the newsletters, each editor reached beyond the La Miranda area to broader California history and produced a black and white printed 40-page booklet. Since 2020, the newsletter remains quarterly, but is an 8 to 12-page color production specific to Moraga La Miranda, reviewing speakers, featuring historic themes, and is created in coordination with Susan Sperry, John Kaiser, and Vera Cochin. Hard copy is mailed to MHS members, and copies are made available online as PDF. History articles are extracted and posted as individual excerpt web pages, which allows adding photos unable to fit into hard copy. Check out moragahistory.org for past scanned editions. MHS is not just about educating adults about Moraga's history. In 1990, Susan Sperry initiated a program to introduce Moraga's history to sixth graders at Joaquin Moraga. In 2000, the program was changed to doing this with third graders. We include all of the Moraga schools, including Southland, and next year hope to include Canyon. The tour consists of 3 topics dealing with the early history, the train history, and the ranching and farming history. There are 3-hour-long sessions on each of 3 days, with students moving through the 15-minute topics during each hour. This year we had 300 students participate. Archiving historical information and interpreting it so as to educate our audience has been a core purpose of the Moraga Historical Society since its founding in 1965, and we still work hard doing that. But an equally important purpose right from the start was to enable experiencing our history as a community. The 2020 COVID pandemic was a disaster, and we are still struggling to recover. Today's 60th anniversary celebration at the Hacienda Casitas is part of our comeback, and we are very grateful that you have come out today. Romarias were organized field trips to missions, museums, parks, and historical sites beyond Moraga. In the early decades of the society, children were involved, and families drove their own cars to their destination. In later years, the Romarias became bus trips to destinations such as a tour of San Francisco's historical sacred spaces, the Barbary Coast District, the Pan-Pacific International Exposition of 1915 sites, Mount La Salle and Hess Collection in Napa, the Jacuzzi Winery, to name a few. These trips were guided by a docent and included lunch and a day's worth of fun and companionship. Potluck dinners were held in August at the Hacienda de las Flores, and an anniversary banquet was held every October to celebrate the founding of the Moraga Historical Society. The latter was a formal event held at St. Mary's Soda Center with a sit-down dinner and presentation. In 2014, MHS organized the banquet for the 40th anniversary of the incorporation of the town of Moraga. Due to COVID, increasing rental fees, and rising catering costs, potlucks and banquets have not taken place since 2019. When the Moraga Historical Society began in 1965-66, the community of Moraga consisted of young families new to the area. The MHS monthly meetings featured guest speakers highlighting points of interest in Moraga, early founders, Native Americans, stories from the, quote, old-timers, unquote, the history of SMC, American presidents, World War II stories, and much more. These meetings were held in members' homes, local schools, on the St. Mary's campus, and in the community room of the Moraga Library. The speaker series took a hiatus during COVID, but resumed in 2022, taking place at the Hacienda Casita on Sunday afternoons, featuring programs about Native American locations in the Bay Area, fictional mystery novels taking place in local sites, the history of the trains in Moraga, and Moraga's first mayors. Our goal is to organize 2 to 3 speaker events each year. The closest we have come post-COVID to organizing a community history experience is that not a sit-down and watch event, it's a walking tour for the old Moraga town site we created in 2022. It has 8 historic stops, and it takes about 45 minutes to complete the 1.5-mile walk. What is new and different about it is that each stop has its own web page, and you can use a QR code to find the walking tour on your smartphone and read the historical descriptions. Somehow, John Kaiser and Susan Skilton managed to make it start and finish at Canyon Club while looping past Lord's Ice Cream. When we display the tour poster at our booth at the Commons during the 4th of July and the Pear and Wine Festival, it attracts families with young children. We are very encouraged by the interest young families and even new Moraga residents show about Moraga's history. It is as though there is a craving for a sense of place rooted in the past. The walking tour is designed so that anyone can appoint himself or herself as docent and with the help of the website guide a group. Daniel Burks, as his Eagle Scout project, created an SMC walking tour, which we host on our website. We're working on a new walking tour for Val Vista. Late last year, Shane Reisman approached the Moraga and Lafayette Historical Societies with an idea to create a Lafayette-Moraga history trail along the 7.65-mile Lafayette-Moraga Trail. We agreed to assist in developing the text and finding photos for 9 trail markers, of which 5 will be in Moraga. The project is now in the hands of the East Bay Park District and the town councils of Moraga and Lafayette. The trail markers have a 100-word limit, but the signs will have QR codes that take one to a page on our website dedicated to that sign, which will have links to much richer and more detailed historical information. If this project is complete, we think it will do lots to stimulate interest in La Morinda's history. The Moraga Historical Society, since its inception, has been very focused on collecting and archiving the pre-incorporation history of Moraga. We are now ready to focus on the 50-year history since incorporation. On October 12, 2025, we celebrate our 60th anniversary. As part of this, we are recovering our own history as a volunteer organization, of which you will see a lot more on the website in the coming months. Our work with the Time Capsule Project of 2024 really opened our eyes to the importance of volunteer organizations as a backbone of the Moraga community. Our plan for 2026 is to recover the history of past and present volunteer organizations and present it on our website. Moraga deserves to see and appreciate all the good that its volunteer organizations do. Goodbye, Moraga. Long live Moraga. As a record of our past gets digitized, new technology will allow us to do something not previously possible on a low budget. Over 60 years ago, Les Kramus created physical dioramas KRON-TV used to produce a California history series. Our Voices of the Past has a video which features the various dioramas he created. Les Kramus was an extremely talented individual, and our History Center benefits from some of his creations. But where does the Historical Society find the next Les Kramus? Technology, possibly assisted by AI tools, will allow us to construct digital dioramas of the past which blend old photos and information with the present. There are an awful lot of young people in Moraga with technology skills. Some have started reaching out to us to see how they can become a volunteer part of MHS. This is a new generation of people interested in local history. It is as though 60 years after its founding, the Moraga Historical Society is on the threshold of rejuvenation, starting all over again. Imagine standing on Mulholland Ridge and gazing down at present-day Moraga Valley and seeing it ripple into the past as far back as when mastodons walked up the walls of the Bollinger Bluffs, and back into the present. Imagine zooming far out or close up, depending on where you point your gaze. What better future use is there for those smart glasses Meta and Google are working on? Our next walking tour will be about Val Vista, Moraga's first major subdivision, which disappeared in 1926 when San Leandro Reservoir was expanded. Val Vista will be the prototype for this vision of using technology to allow us to experience the past from the perspective of the present. Eventually, we will create a 50-mile La Morinda network we will call the Walking Moraga Challenge. Historical societies are on the threshold of becoming super cool.